Destined Rivals is newly released and will be legal for tournament play on June 13th at the North American International Championships. So today we're looking at the top 10 decks in June 2025 for the Pokémon TCG. This will be an opinion-based list. My goal is to give you an authentic opinion on what the 10 most competitive archetypes will be going into this month, most notably going into NAIC, from the perspective of somebody who is heavily preparing and metagaming for this event. You should know about a few cards out of Destined Rivals that will actually have an impact on the format and on what decks are good, and those are going to be Shaman, Team Rocket's Watchtower, and Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX. If you're looking for where are the new cards and how are things changing, it's going to be because of these three cards. So we're going to kick things off with number 10, N's Zoroark. So N's Zoroark is immediately being impacted by the new Shaman, since Shaman will protect Pokemon on the bench, and one of N's Zoroark's best strategies is sniping benched Pokemon by copying the N-Star Manatan attack, doing 90 to the active and 90 bench. This is a really good strategy against Noctowl decks, against Dragapult decks, against Gardevoir, and it's very likely that we'll see Dragapult and Gardevoir decks both play Shaman. If not, the Gardevoirs stick to a Rabsca, which also block that. So that's going to be problematic for N's Zoroark. However, with Gardevoir still being a really good deck and N's Zoroark having type advantage against it, we could still see N's Zoroark stick around, even though Shaman counters one of the core strategies of the deck. Next at number 9 is Tera Box, which is also going to be affected by the release of Shaman, and is also affected by the release of Team Rocket's Watchtower, which can shut down the Noctowl engine, which is an integral part of this deck. Now, while Tera Box does typically want to use the Water Ogre Pond's Torrential Pump to hit the bench and take multi-knockout turns, and that is going to be inhibited by the release of Shaman, Tera Box still has other things going for it. It has the power of Pikachu EX, it has Terapagos EX, Briar, you can even include Charizard EX lines in here. So Tera Box might just have to get a little more creative now that the Water Pond is not so much of a consistent and reliable early game strategy for taking 2 prizes before your opponent can with Shaman in the format, but it also needs to worry about the release of Team Rocket's Watchtower, which when paired with an Iono or Unfair Stamp could leave this deck with very little options. So still a formidable deck with a lot of options, but going to be lower on today's list because of those new releases and the way that the meta is going to shift. Number 8 is Joltik Box. Joltik Box is the premier kind of beginner-friendly deck in the format, while also being quite strong thanks to Iron Hands EX that can take 2 prizes on single prizers, and Pikachu EX that can blow up just about anything, even stage 2 Pokemon EX when paired with Gravity Mountain to bring their HP down a little bit. And of course it's all tied together by the namesake of the deck, Joltik, which has one of the most incredible energy acceleration attacks we've ever seen, searching the deck for 2 lightning and 2 grass and setting your Pokemon up. Joltik Box could have a good time here because it looks to be favorable into Grimmsnarl, Marnie's Grimmsnarl, which we will get to and is looking to be one of the big decks of this metagame. But it also struggles into Raging Bolt, which is going to be one of the big decks of this metagame. So a little bit of a flip-flop field for Joltik Box. Some really good matchups, some really bad matchups. But at the end of the day, it's a fast deck, pretty consistent, and not too complicated to play. So I think we will see it stick around here. Number 7 is Gholdengo. And I'm going to specifically name the Gholdengo Dragapult variant, although I do think that there are some legs to the Gholdengo Ethan's Typhlosion. So Ethan's Quilava and Ethan's Typhlosion and Ethan's Adventure. This can be a small package that gets put into a Gholdengo deck. But like I said, I am going to specifically name here Gholdengo Dragapult as the one that I'm comfortable saying is the 7th best deck. Gholdengo looks to typically have a good matchup into Gardevoir and Dragapult, which are two insanely strong decks and really good decks to have good matchups into. And the jury's still out on its Grimmsnarl Frostlass matchup. That one can be a little difficult because of item lock and damage spread. And then you have the Raging Bolt and Flareon matchups, which also aren't good. So Gholdengo does have some really strong matchups and matchups that you like having a very strong matchup into, which is good for it. But then there's also some complications flying around as well. But Gholdengo is a strong, consistent deck, draws a lot of cards, can do an uncapped amount of damage. So I'd be surprised to see it not have any success. I think it definitely deserves its spot here on the top 10. Next at number 6 is Flareon, or the Eevee's box. There are a lot of options for this deck. Flareon is going to be a mainstay. Typically, Sylveon EX will also be a mainstay, but then you can decide between adding Leafeon EX and Umbreon EX. I think Leafeon is definitely a great choice because it hits Grimmsnarl for weakness, it hits Charizard for weakness, it even hits something like End's Zoroark for weakness, which you don't really need because that's a good matchup anyway. But the Leafeon, while hitting Grimmsnarl for weakness, also heals your bench by 100 HP each, or 100 damage each. So Leafeon EX is like the one card counter that just destroys Grimmsnarl's strategy. One shots Grimmsnarl, which it wants to survive hits because it's a bulky stage 2 EX Pokemon that takes some setup, and then it also heals all the damage that they're building up on your bench. So Flareon can tech and have strategies into just about anything in the game, which is a really, really strong aspect of a toolbox deck. But it also comes with some clunkiness, some inconsistencies. It takes very meticulous play to get the full power out of this deck, since there are so many options and there's a lot of room for error. And also, we gotta be careful with the Team Rocket's Watchtower out there that can, like I said, just shut down the Noctowl engine deck, the Noctowl engine of your deck, so that could be pretty scary. So with that in mind, Flareon does look really enticing because of all the tech options, but I am metering those expectations with Flareon at number 6 today. Next up, we have Raging Bolt. I think Raging Bolt is the premier aggro archetype of this format. You have Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is good consistency, good energy acceleration, and good typing, hitting grass weakness into both Grimmsnarl and Charizard. And then you have Raging Bolt, which can one-shot basically anything. And then you have the Noctowl engine, which is very good, and this deck relies on the Noctowl engine much less as the game goes on compared to Flareon and Tera Box. Playing the 3-3 line, you'll typically be using Noctowl to get into games, but then you can close out games a little bit more than the other decks with a combination of Mew EX and Fezandipity and Teal Mask Ogerpon and Professor Sada's, because remember, the Tera Box deck and Flareon, they're typically getting their energy acceleration from Crispin, which is a great card but doesn't draw cards. So what Raging Bolt has on its side is Professor Sada's, which puts 2 energy into play that you'll need, but also draws you cards. So I think Raging Bolt can handle being Team Rocket's Watchtowered a little bit more. You're still not going to like seeing that card, but I think it can handle it a little bit better than the other Noctowl engine decks that I mentioned. And also to note that Shaman can hurt this deck because Raging Bolt likes to use the non-EX Raging Bolt to snipe Pokemon. But Shaman isn't always getting down in time. You can't Buddy Poffin for it, so you're going to have to either open it in your hand or have a Ball Search or an Artisan to get it out. And then that also means that they're getting less Dreepies or less of their other Pokemon. So Shaman and Watchtower can both be a problem for Raging Bolt, but even in the face of those new cards, Raging Bolt is a very powerful deck, and it should be having a good matchup into Grimmsnarl, which is one of our new top contenders. Next at number 4 is Dragapult Charizard. So I do think Charizard itself has some potential. Charizard with the Noctowl engine, Charizard with the Pidgeot engine, but I didn't feel comfortable enough putting those onto the top 10 because even though they did well in Japan, the Japanese format is a little different. Namely, they have this Psyduck card that came out as a promo that basically just turns off Dusclops and Dusknoir, which I think was a big meta shifter in Japan, and potentially why we saw Dragapult Noctowl, Dragapult Pidgeot both have top 4 successes. However, Dragapult Charizard, that's another story, because no matter what the meta is here, we don't have Psyduck, but Dragapult Charizard is a very, very solid deck, combining 2 of the most powerful Stage 2 lines with Dracloak's drawing ability, Dragapult EX's Phantom Dive, and then Charizard EX's Infernal Rain to set up your Pokemon, and a really, really powerful scaling attack that gets better as the game goes on. So Dragapult Charizard, I do expect to be a top contender for this format, and that's why we have it at number 4. Moving into the top 3, I did a lot of shifting around with these top 3 decks. I will say the top 3 here are going to be Gardevoir, Dragapult, and Marnie's Grimmsnarl. And I could see putting these in any ordering within the top 3. I also think there could be argument for Dragapult Charizard and Raging Bolt making it into the top 3, as well as potentially number 3 for either of them. But we are going to start here with number 3 being Marnie's Grimmsnarl Frostlass. So Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX basically comes in and adds to the already existing Munkidori Frostlass Badoo archetype, and gives you a really strong stage 2 that's self-efficient at setting itself up. It works with the deck because it's using Dark Energy. The Spikemuth Stadium card is really strong because you can just secret box for Candy and the Stadium and then get your Marnie's Grimmsnarl, so it has that consistency to it. Has that burst of damage and high HP that Frostlass Munkidori was previously missing as an archetype, and you're hitting Gardevoir for weakness, so you couldn't ask for much more with this really large addition to an already pre-existing damage spread kind of slower archetype. Now we've got Marnie's Grimmsnarl Frostlass as its own archetype here, and it did really well in the Japanese Champions League in Aichi in May, and I'm expecting it to have a big impact at the NAIC this year as well. Number 2 is going to be Dragapult, and I am going to specifically name Dragapult Dusknoir. Straight Dragapult, I'm sure if we have some good pilots taking it to NAIC, we will still see success from it. However, I think Dragapult Dusknoir is innately better into this upcoming metagame. I think Dragapult Dusknoir has a better time into Gardevoir, a better time into Grimmsnarl, a better time into Dragapult Charizard. So yeah, I'm really favoring the Dusknoir variant of Dragapult. And you can't really go wrong with the consistency of Dracloak, the powerful spread of Phantom Dive, the no printed weakness of Dragapult EX, and of course Dusclops and Dusknoir. This might be one of their last times to really dominate a format before we get that Psyduck promo I was talking about. We do not have that for NAIC. We don't know when it's releasing. It definitely won't be before NAIC. So Dragapult Dusknoir, I do think, is one of the top decks, if not the top deck, to be looking out to either play or prepare against going into this format. And then number 1 is going to be Gardevoir EX. So there's kind of 2 schools of thought for Gardevoir. You could play the Gardevoir with more rare candies, like Brent Tonneson saw a lot of success with in our most recent meta. And then you could also play the Gardevoir with TM Evolution, which also saw success at the very end over in Portland. But that's also been the way that it looks like players are using it in Japan at their majors as well. So Gardevoir EX has a lot of power. The Psychic Embrace is incredible energy acceleration that sets up your Screamtails, your Drifloons, even your own Gardevoir. And the deck also works really, really well with Munkidori. It cannot be understated. No, it cannot be overstated how powerful Munkidori's Adrenabrain is. And then also the Mind Bend with the effect of Confusion is also really strong. So Gardevoir makes use of Munkidori. It's one of the best users of that card, and Grimmsnarl is one of the others. So I think NAIC could definitely turn into a competition of who can use and abuse Munkidori's Adrenabrain the best. And I have Gardevoir up here as the top deck because it's a very strong deck, very consistent. It can find lines into just about any matchup. And I also, I know that we will see a lot of strong pilots on this deck, and it is bound to be successful at the North American International Championships in just a couple of weeks. So there's my top 10 for June 2025. Let me know in the comments down below what I got wrong, what you think I got right. If you have questions about why your rogue deck is not here, please leave it in the comments down below. Maybe we can get some discussion going. But thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.